Here we go for game one. Me versus Ektorakos as Hayley. I'm about to jump straight in and I'm going to mulligan very quickly. I'm doing these commentaries after the fact because people who can play and commentate are geniuses. I'm mulliganing a double Cyberdeck Sansan 2 Ice hand, which has no economy and doesn't really do anything, into a hand which has got an Astro, a Breaking News, a DBS, a piece of ice, and draws a Jackson, which is pretty good. So my plan here is just to fire off the sweep, gain some money, go up to 9, cover up my HQ because obviously that's where some agendas are, and put the DBS out. It's not key to my plan. If Ektorakos decides to go in and look at it and trash it, that's fine by me. If he doesn't, then I'm going to get some good selection options. So, and yes, here's me discovering that you can increase the interface, so hopefully it's a bit more readable. So he sure gambles, runs at my DBS, thinks about it for a second, and chooses to trash it. So after 2 clicks he's pretty much where he was. Runs my R&D, which makes sense. I've left it wide open. He sees a Jackson off the top and pays to trash that and draws. Now, I would probably have chosen for him to do that. He's burned out a lot of his economy trashing assets that are not critical to me, and hasn't really accomplished anything in doing that. In the meantime, I can throw down the Jackson that I drew, cover up my R&D with a wraparound. I'm still on 9 credits. I've got a hedge fund in hand, which I'm ready to fire off. And so now all I'm looking for is an opportunity to dump down one of the, well, something to score this Astro behind and start going off. So I draw an all-seeing eye, not that useful, so Jackson will get me some more cards. I'm a bit agenda flooded here, and here's the first thing that I do which I don't really like, having watched this back. What I should probably have done here is drawn another 2 and flushed my hand. Instead I put the Gutenberg down over R&D, costing myself a credit, which wasn't really necessary. And because I didn't flush my hand earlier, he's going to run my Jackson. Since one's already in my bin, I don't want to just rely on a single Jackson left in my in my R&D. I decide to shuffle the trashed one back in. But I'm still not under much pressure. My opponent puts out a drug dealer and an Aesop's, and I draw a news team. So since he's been checking all my remotes, I decide, okay, let's see whether he wants to just go and check that. Now here I'm not sure why I'm torn between installing the Mother Goddess in a new remote and gaining credit. The Mother Goddess is obviously what I want to score behind, but for reasons which defy even my own explanation, I decide to click for a credit and discard the All-Seeing Eye, even though he's got 2 resources in play. Kids, don't do that. That was a bad choice. So my opponent test runs for an Opus, clicks it 3 times and dumps it back on his deck. He's obviously setting up super slowly, and this is probably a brilliant example of what you should not be doing against a deck which is trying to fast advance against you. He's putting me under no pressure. He's spending all his time just setting up, getting his pieces out. In the meantime, I've got an Astro behind, a Mother Goddess with no ice res, which means he needs an Atman at 4, a Faust, or a Femme Fatale to get through, or some other AI breakers or an inside job, but coming from Hayley that seems unlikely. And yep, there I go. He just doodles around with his Opus and I score the Astro with another Astro in hand. Now, right here, absolutely the best thing that he should be doing is running at my HQ. When Fast Advance scores that first Astro, it's beholden on you as the runner to make sure they don't have any more in hand. All you're doing, if they have, is giving them 3 points. Instead, he's just setting up again. Clone chip, personal workshop, which gives me another window to dump out a second Astro. So now I'm on 4. 2 more points worth of agendas in hand and a scored Astro token versus a magnum opus, really, and not much else to show for it. So my opponent, kind of going into the tank here, installs a FEM on the personal workshop. Draws. Again, not really under any pressure. Hasn't made any kind of significant run against me. So, just another opportunity to fire off one of these agendas. Now, all I'm looking to do is draw a 3-2 to finish this game off. Again, the correct play really for my opponent here is to think about, okay, let's make the corpse start rezzing ice. The reality is I probably haven't got anything too threatening in my ice package, so even face checking it with an opus out is probably not the worst thing he could do, and he might get some free accesses if I'm trying to save some money. But sat on 10 credits with a sweeps week in hand, I'm really not feeling any pressure at all from this Hayley, and they are just sat here in the tank. In fact, a little bit of movie editing magic is about to come up as they actually ended up tanking for, or probably walking away from their computer or talking to someone in the next room for about 2 minutes. So there might be a little jump cut coming up here. There's really not much else to say here. The opponent is not making my life difficult for me. He's just setting up, and slow decks versus decks like Fast Advance, especially Fast Advance with a bunch of counters, a bunch of agendas in hand, is not the kind of deck that you can sit and use your clicks to install clone chips and wait for your femme fatale to click down. Now I'm sure in a longer running game, a Glacier matchup, the combination of Femmes, R&D interface and Magnum Opus means that he could probably establish some kind of R&D lock, but the reality is that he just won't have time to do that. So yep, my opponent again installing R&D interface, Astrolabe, clicking for credits. So now I'm just drawing to find the last agenda, and what I've actually found is another breaking news. So I can score out to 7 here on the next 2 turns with a breaking news and the 15 minutes. And my opponent's not got a clot in the bin, he's got no self-mod out, he's got no way of preventing me from doing that. Obviously you want to score the breaking news first out of those 2, because if he does get into HQ, decide to take an agenda, you will obviously want him to take the 15 minutes. So here comes the first kind of run in earnest of the game into the Gutenberg I put there. My opponent's just going to let this fire. Take the tag. See what the next piece of ice is. Now, all he's got in play is an opus and a 7 counters on a fem, so what he was expecting to accomplish from this run, it's difficult to know. I mean, he can potentially get in here by paying 7 off the fem, 1 to bypass the wraparound, but then would only have 1 credit to clear the tag. So he decides to bounce off the wraparound. I install advance, score the second breaking news, and now I'm just a turn away from victory. My opponent thinks I've actually won already, but no. So, with one last turn to go, he should really be thinking about stopping me from ever drawing an agenda again. Like, at this point in his situation, I would probably be taking credits off Opus, then running through R&D and just taking the tag. Instead, my opponent decides to install cache, install film critic, draw a card. And on his last click, is he going to run? No, he's going to install Net Ready Eyes. Okay. And that's game. 15 minutes down. Advance. and score for the 7 points. Now, this isn't much of a game, I'll admit. In fact, it's a pretty much a whitewash, but it's a good example of what not to do against Fast Advance.